Thank you, councillors. I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting this evening, this Licensing and Public Protection Committee meeting, and also anyone who's watching the video or online. Before commencement of business, I would like us to hold a moment's silence for the late Mayor, Councillor Barry Panter. So if you would all stand, please. Okay, moving to the agenda for the evening. Agenda items 1 to 6 are with reference to the Licensing Committee, and agenda items 7 to 11 refer specifically to the Public Protection Committee. So first of all, do we have any apologies? I have apologies from Councillor Ian Wilkes, who is substituted by Councillor Hutchison. Are there any others?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, Councillor Skelding's been called away on business and he's not being substituted by anybody.
Thank you for that, Councillor Sweeney. Are there any declarations of interest relating to licensing matters that councillors have to make? No? If you could all refer back to the minutes of the previous meeting, which are either in a pack, if you have a printed pack, is pages 5 to 8, still 5 to 8 if you've got them on screen. Can we agree that those are accurate minutes, or does anyone want to raise anything? Fine, thank you very much. Agenda item 4 is with reference to the alcohol of sales regulatory easement consultation result, and you'll find that on pages 9 to 20. Could I ask our officer Matt to give you a synopsis of this, please? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. This matter came before the committee in July 2024. There was a consultation from the Home Office in relation to alcohol off sales easements, which were first brought in under the coronavirus pandemic. The committee approved a council response for that, which was submitted to the Home Office, and we've just been waiting for an outcome until then. So the easements were due to end on the 31st of March, or are due to end on the 31st of March this month, and the consultation was just to see what would happen next in relation to those, whether they would be made permanent or whether they would be made amendments to the Licensing Act. As a way of a bit of a background, during coronavirus, you'll remember the Business and Planning Act was brought in, which brought in pavement licences, which have since been made permanent, and it allowed premises that had alcohol for consumption on sales to allow for off sales with no permission required. That's the easement that we were talking about in relation to the consultation. The response that we sent off in the summer is attached at Appendix A. So on the 27th of February, the Home Office published the response from the consultation, and the decision was to not move forward with any of the proposals that they put forward within that consultation, but instead go back to an earlier document and consultation that they'd carried out in 2023. So the stance now is that anyone who did benefit from that easement, that relaxation, that will now cease for everyone on the 31st of March. And if they do wish to benefit from off sales as well as on sales, they must now make a variation, as was the position prior to the provisions coming in within coronavirus. The Home Office have rather helpfully amended the statutory guidance to suggest that those sorts of applications should be dealt with under minor variations rather than full variation, which is cheaper, quicker, less scrutiny, but does go to the responsible bodies or the relevant responsible bodies as required. So the reason really for the report is just for members to note that we submitted the consultation response back in the summer. We now know the results, and the results are that it is going back to as it was pre-2020. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Do councillors have any comments or questions to make? Sorry?
It appears not, no.
Right, thank you. So then if the committee could just note the contents of the report, Matt, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Agenda item 5 is the relaxation of licensing hours for the 2025 Women's UEFA European Championships, which you will find on pages 21 to 24. And again, Matt, as our officer, if you could give us a synopsis, please.
Yes, thank you again, Chair. The purpose of this report is to inform the committee of another consultation, and it relates to relaxation of licensing hours order, which we've seen many of before. They're typically for special events. So there's Queen's Platinum Jubilee, the Royal Weddings, King's Coronation. They've also been used in sporting events, in World Cups and men's UEFA Championships as well. This is a consultation in relation to whether there should be relaxation on licensing hours for this summer's UEFA Women's European Championships, which takes place in June and July. The consultation is very similar to the one that we had last year or the year before for the men's, in that if a home nations team, so that's England and Wales on this occasion, make it to either the semi-final or the final, then the licensing hours for the premises that already have alcohol on sales, so we're talking pubs really, if they have their hours until 11 o'clock already, then this order would make it automatic that they could stop open and sell alcohol until 1 a.m. The following morning. It doesn't affect or have any benefit to off sales for supermarkets or anything like that, or late night takeaways, or anywhere that doesn't have on sales of alcohol. It's purely for those premises that have on sale consumption. Just at 2.2 of the report, it just gives a bit of an example. So if England, for example, were to make the first semi-final, which is scheduled for the 22nd of July, then on the 22nd of July, then the relaxation would take effect. And assuming Wales weren't in the one for the next day, there would be no relaxation. It would be normal hours for normal premises. Just at 2.5, rather than attaching an appendix, there were only 6 questions in the consultation. Is, do we support it, and have there been issues previously? We've not experienced any issues when we've had any of these orders made previously. So our suggestion is that we support the order. So recommendations for the committee this evening are to note the contents of the report and agree that the proposed response can be submitted prior to the consultation closing, which is on the 23rd of March. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Matt. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Councillor Allport.
I think it's worked well in the past. It brings people into the town, brings revenue to the pubs and also the taxi drivers. So I think we should support it.
And I think everybody's quite happy for those things to happen. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? So I move that the contents of the report and the proposed response be submitted prior to the consultation closing. All those in favour? Yes. Thank you very much, Matt. The final item on the agenda for the licensing committee is the minutes of the licensing subcommittee meetings, which appear on pages 25 to 26 of your pack. Is everyone happy that they are an accurate record of those minutes?
Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Hutchison. Oh, yes.
Just agreed.
I thought you had a point to raise. I'm thinking.
I'm just agreeing, Chair, because I was the chair at one of the meetings. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I thought you'd found something wonderful. So if we move on to the agenda items that refer to the Public Protection Committee, those are agenda items 7 to 11 in your pack. The first, item 7, is does anyone have any declarations of interest in relation to public protection matters? No. Moving on to agenda item 8, the consultation responses in relation to the revocation of and changes to existing smoke control areas. And our officer Tracy is going to do a synopsis of this for us, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Purpose of this paper is really to feedback on a previous decision that the council made in October 2023. So to just recap quickly, in December 2022, the committee approved an officer-led review of enforcement options for smoke control areas and for a report to be brought to committee with proposals. And following that, in October 2023, the committee resolved 3 matters with a further outstanding matter. That was that they would approve that the Newcastle-under-Lyme Borough Smoke Control Revocation Order be approved, and that the whole of the administrative area of the Borough of Newcastle-under-Lyme would become a single smoke control area. However, the 4th matter was that they would like to receive a further report for consideration following a consultation regarding the proposals. So just to recap for anybody who wasn't at that last meeting, a smoke control area is an area declared by the local authority where people and businesses must not emit smoke from a chimney unless they're using an authorised appliance and fuel. As you can see from this slide, there's the reason behind this legislation is health outcomes, particularly the effect of PM 2.5. And this slide just shows the different emissions that you get from different appliances. And the small chart in the bottom right-hand corner is significant because what it shows is that 50% of particulate matter is naturally occurring, but of the 50% that's man-made, over half comes from wood burners and stoves. So PM 2.5 hasn't been on the agenda as much as nitrogen dioxide, but the health effects for people throughout their lifetime is significant. From pregnancy, people are very familiar with things like asthma, but not so much with the implications to stroke, coronary heart disease, dementia, and diabetes, lung cancer, and other impacts. So the next slide hopefully is useful to show on the left the borough you'll be familiar with. On the right, the very right-hand side, there's a red hatched area. This is already a smoke control area. But rather than being one uniform one, it's 21 individual ones all joined together. So the consultation, which we were asked to undertake, merely asked, do you agree with the proposal to revoke the existing smoke order and replace them with a single smoke control order? 77% strongly disagreed. What I would say with this is there were only 144 respondents, so a very small amount of respondents. And the other question that was asked was just based on age group, and it's not surprising to see 75% of people fall within sort of 40 to 75 age range. One thing that we thought was probably worth noting for the committee is that the census shows that throughout the whole area, only 0.9% of people have no central heating, although that is still 1,250 households. And equally, surprisingly, perhaps I should just point out, the majority of those were in the town centre, not rural areas. And then the next slide shows that 0.3% rely on solid fuel alone, and that equates to 416 households that are reliant. So the recommendation is that we go with what you formally approved at your last committee, that the whole administrative area of the Borough of Newcastle-under-Lyme is approved as a single smoke control area. Or there is an option 2, that the 21 existing areas become amalgamated to form a single urban one, which will over time expand by the 1st of April 2027 to cover the whole borough and take into account the future land allocations for development. The reason that this was suggested was to allow people the 2 years to use up any fuel that they've already purchased and stored. The idea with this process that we would like to implement is to use an educational and comms plan, so that we're informing people of how they can minimise their exposure to pollutants and how they can reduce the amount of pollutants in their households and really the health benefits of reducing them. And that was really basically what we'd like to ask the committee to decide on. One of those decisions, please, recommendations.
Thank you very much, Tracy. There's a lot of work gone into that. Thank you so much for that. And it's good that we're tracking it so carefully. So thank you. So there are actually 2 recommendations following the purpose of the report, and they're there 1 or 2. Are there any councillors who'd like to comment or ask questions? Sorry, Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Did you comment, Madam Chair, on the advice on reducing damp and condensation? On occasions over the years, I've visited properties that have complained of damp, and the landlords complained that they haven't done anything about the damp. But I was, as I'm not expert, but the way forward is to advise people to open windows. Now, we get some properties with real damp problems, but the majority I see is open windows. And there's a good article, it was on through the Telegraph on Google, and this lady had got it on social media. And she was advising people through the winter, open the window 10 minutes, even with the heating on. And I've done it at home just as an experiment. You got the heating on, open the window. You don't feel the draft, but there's fresh air coming into the house. In the summer, half an hour. And I know people do concerned on safety and that, people getting into their properties and that, but common sense should be used in the way that you open windows, whether it's safe or unsafe. And that does circulate air through the properties. And according to this, this particular article, damp spores are there all the time, and you've got to allow fresh air into the property to reduce those spurs, because you settle and moving furniture away from walls, don't shove furniture right up. And I did email Spire, and how do you advise residents? You know, how do you advise them? You know, can you get some kind of circulate some advice? And surely that's the way forward, because we know through the winter, damp was a big issue, and damp spores are very dangerous. You know, you've been into properties where you can actually walk through like you were doing dust. You can write your name on the damp, the spores, and people are breathing them in, so it has an effect on NHS. So, you know, thank you for the presentation, Chair, from the officer. But, you know, it's a real, how you get out to residents to open windows and help themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Adcock.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's an interesting issue. My mother lives in a place which is very rural in another county, so rural it's not on the national grid. And she has forms of heating, but largely relies on in the winter a log burner for heating, and it's very efficient in heating the entire house, the one she has. I'd be concerned that if 77% of respondents to the consultation are saying they strongly disagree with covering the whole borough with a single smoke order, and if we were to go with option 1, regardless, it might send the wrong message about the impact of consultations. I think I'd be more comfortable giving people a bit more time to think about using up their supplies of fuel, and then putting out some more information about using appropriate fuel with moisture control. And then, as I said, in 2027, covering the whole borough with a smoke control order. I think for those really rural people who might not know the legislation around moisture control fuel, I think that would be a more beneficial option for me.
Thank you, Councillor Adcock. Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I agree with everything Councillor Adcock just said. I think option 2 gives people 2 years. I think 1st of April's been picked because it's the end of the burning season, if you like. Winter's getting past and people won't need the smokeless fuel so much. It gives them a chance to get rid of all the stocks they've got. It gives them a 2-year lead into this. And of the 2 things, I would much rather support number 2 than number 1. Thank you.
I used to live in a rural property in Cheshire. I agree with absolutely everything that Councillor Williams says. There are a number of things that people do. They button down the hatches and close the windows. Furniture goes up against the walls. On top of that, they tend to dry clothes indoors over radiators and things, which is just asking for it. One of the things that we also used to do in the rural areas was you get your logs in 2025 and store them. You don't use them until 2026 because they give off so much moisture, which pollutes the air and gives out far less heat. So there's a lot of things that could be put out there for people to take on board. Councillor, sorry, I didn't miss you. I saw you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Could I ask the officer to clarify what she means by approved appliances, just to remind me where we are in terms of open fires, log burners, etc.?
So there is actually a very, very long list of different appliances and fuels, but the traditional wood burner that you might be familiar with, there's a picture of one here that I can show you. It's quite useful.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Hutchison.
Yeah, I was just going to.
You're off.
Back on again.
No.
Yes.
Am I on? Okay. I was just going to agree with Councillor Williams and Councillor Adcock and Councillor Sweeney. I think the 1st of April 27 makes good sense. It gives us time for education. We'd have the 2025 winter, the 2026 winter. So if there is any stock that's lying around, then it can be used. We can then also educate people on how to store the wood properly. Damp wood will smoke, whereas wood that's been dried properly, as per one of the diagrams that's been supplied by Tracy, then if wood is stored correctly, then it won't smoke. So I think allowing residents 2 winters, the team can then do a lot of education. So my vote with the others is the 1st of April 27 to me makes sense, so that the whole borough is treated the same. I don't think there should be one rule for Madeley and one for Maybank, or one for Betley and one for Bradwell. I think everybody needs to be the same. And the 1st of April 27 to me makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hutchison. I'm sorry. Councillor Whitmore.
I agree with what's been said. Madeley isn't a smoke-free zone at the moment, and it will benefit Madeley. And going with the second opinion, it'll give the people in Madeley time to get their act together, that sort of thing. Thank you.
Can I just?
Yeah, we'll finish up over there.
Yes, please. Can we actually inform landlords of this article as well, because a lot of people living in these properties have landlords, and it'll be them who will have to put in the new equipment, won't it, or, you know, log burners or whatever they're going to put in, because otherwise we're penalising a tenant when really it's the landlord who will have to do this, won't it?
I think that's a good comment, but from what I gather, there seems to be two lots of information that have to go out. One to the landlord, like you say, to do with the actual burners, and another to the tenants, because it's no good getting that right. And like Councillor Williams says, I'm going to cause a family dispute now. Yeah, Councillor Williams says there's, you know, you've got to open the windows and you've got to bring furniture. Yeah, so you've got two lots of advice to get to two separate groups of people for there to actually be a change and an improvement. Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions? No.
No, we're
You're
waiting,
gonna have to
we're waiting
wait.
for you on the
You're
stove.
going to have to wait. It's ladies first.
Thank you, Chair.
Welcome. Sorry.
I've agreed with everything that's been said. It's very sensible, and I think it's got to be simple. You know, the one boundary, and that makes total sense. But I'm wondering about it because, you know, often with these things, you know, the best thing in the world, right?
Difficult to enforce what people do in their private household. So could the officer give us any feedback on enforcement?
Yeah, part of the reason that DEFRA brought in these compliant equipment and compliant fuel was because of the challenges of enforcement, because you can't know what has been burnt after the event. And also a compliant fuel, like we've said, if you haven't seasoned, you could buy properly seasoned wood and then you could store it poorly, and then that becomes a non-compliant fuel. So enforcement is incredibly difficult. So that's what the reason why DEFRA has gone down this route of having smoke control areas, because and they encourage education and information and communication to allow people to make their own choices. There's no way we could be running around the district with the officers enforcing it unless there was a consistent problem that was brought to our attention, and then we would look at it if it was a persistent, unreasonable problem.
I agree with all the points that were made. I'm just to add something to this. We're focusing on winter fuel burning, but which is contained to people's houses. But throughout the summer, people are having barbecues, fire pits, chimneys, etc., which aren't as regulated as, you know, things you burn in your house. You're not as careful about what you're burning in your garden as you burn in your house. So that could be sort of significant infringements of any legislation.
As I understood from previous commentary that's been made by the officers, one-off occasions like burning garden rubbish is not counted as a dreadful thing to happen. It's when it becomes habitual. Is that right?
Well, so this smoke control area doesn't apply to barbecues, pizza ovens, garden burning. It's a completely different set of legislation, which would be nuisance, which could apply. And that would be if it have to be unreasonable and persistent. So that's a similar type of approach, but not in relation to smoke control areas. It's not. But we would like to extend the communication plan so that we're letting people know how they can dispose of their green waste and that type of issue as well.
I think the short answer is we've got to do something. If we do nothing, it'll get worse. So do something in the hope that part of the problem gets solved, and just see how it goes. So we've got two options which we have to vote on, I understand. So would you raise your hands, please, those who opt for recommendation 1? 0. Those who opt for recommendation 2? I think that's unanimous. So thank you very much for that. So we have the minutes of the Public Protection Subcommittee on pages 39 to 40. Is everyone happy that they're an accurate record? Thank you. There's no disclosure of exempt information, I understand, no? And there's no urgent business. So thank you all very much. And the meeting closed at 7:31. I'm a minute later than I normally am. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. It is.